For some time now, I've been telling you that the world is becoming more multipolar. It's not just about the US running the show or the Western world running the show or even the US versus China. It's a lot of different blocks of countries all around the world getting together and doing deals to benefit their country and in turn giving you more opportunities than ever to move somewhere with lower taxes, move your business somewhere that's more competitive, and get residencies and citizenships to protect you from legacy brand countries that want to tax you. Multipolarity is the future. And now a pretty big name in the investment space is saying the same thing. I'm going to tell you what you need to know about how to play multipolarity to your benefit. And I'm going to share an article with you from the Singapore Business Times. They say globalization is gone and plurilateralism is on the rise. Who's saying this? Well, the head of Temasek, which is basically Singapore's for-profit company with the money from their sovereign wealth fund. The article in the Business Times says cooperative arrangements are gaining prominence as governments build alternative trade and investment links. What I've been telling you for some time, what I've especially been talking about at Nomad Capitalist Live, our annual event, is the rest of the world, the global south as they call it, is tired of the US and the Western world bossing them around, telling them what to do, and trying to stop them from being competitive. That's why you saw the global south in some cases push back on the global minimum tax on big corporations. It's why you saw them push back on some of the COVID mandates. From finances to freedom and lifestyle, the global south is trying to make itself a better place to be, and they've become pretty successful in recent years. That's why I live in Malaysia and Colombia and Georgia and Serbia and have a home in Turkey and spending a lot of the next year traveling Africa, because those are the places where the opportunity is. But I'm now being joined by one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world in saying, you don't want to rely on the bankrupt systems of legacy brand countries that are taxing you into oblivion, all because they don't want to give up power. Here's the Dateline Abu Dhabi. Globalization, as experienced over the past 30 years, is gone and will be replaced by more and more plurilateralism, says Dilhan Pillay, Executive Director and CEO of Singapore investment company Temasek. Plurilateralism refers to cooperation among a group of countries that choose to work together on specific issues, as opposed to multilateral agreements involving all members of the grouping and without requiring participation from the entire international community. Such arrangements have gained prominence in recent years as governments build alternative trade and investment links in response to rising U.S. protectionism and tariffs. Basically what it's saying is, hey, we can't trust the US anymore. To a lesser extent, we can't trust the West anymore. We're tired of being sanctioned. We're tired of everything. So, hey, let's let foreign investors come and we'll give them a tax deal. Hong Kong says, set up your company here, you might pay zero tax. We want your money to come here. Countries like Malaysia and Singapore and Southeast Asia say, you know what? Come and live here. We won't tax the money you earn somewhere else. Same way in Latin America, countries like Panama or Uruguay do the same. What you're seeing is the world is pushing back on a system that it believes is unfair because it sees that's the way to becoming wealthy. And in the way, on their way up, the same way that Singapore did decades ago, and UAE and other Gulf countries you're going now, them saying, hey, we want to make our country better, generally means a pathway for you to go there, get low taxes, if not zero taxes. Many of these countries offer residence permits and citizenships, and these are going to be your bulwarks against Western countries that don't want globalization and that don't want the global South to become successful because they don't want competition. That's exactly what we're seeing right now in Europe, where the EU is literally getting together at the behest of France and telling not a Gulf country or some zero tax haven somewhere in the ocean, but literally telling Italy that taxing people a flat 6 figures to live there is uncompetitive and has to be stopped. Countries in the West don't want competition, so the rest of the world is saying plurilateralism, we'll get together and we will do agreements that benefit our countries. Singapore and the UAE, for instance, the article continues, have signed agreements to promote trade and investment, which could later expand into broader collaborations with other economies, he said. I believe that the future is the future of partnerships. No one can go at it alone. Pillay was speaking at a panel discussion and on and on and on. You can read the whole article in the Singapore Business Times, one of about 12 or 13 newspapers I subscribe to and read daily. But this is what I've been saying. The world is fragmenting, and it's not going to be about what's the next Singapore. People from day one of Nomad Capitalist have said, hey, Andrew, yeah, In the 70s, Singapore was a mess. Now it's like the global standard. How do I move there? That's probably too late. Okay, what's the next Singapore? There's going to be a number of them. There's going to be the next Singapore for this, for that, for the other. And the pie is getting bigger, but each slice of the pie is getting smaller because we're seeing a niching down of where you can go. So there's the best places for crypto investors to go. There's the best places for IT entrepreneurs to go, and so on. This is what Nomad Capitalist does. We help our clients figure out the best places for you to go where you're treated best. Where you're going to be treated best is probably different than where I'm going to be treated best because my needs, wants, and desires are different than yours. If you want to make your own custom plan to go offshore and take advantage of greater competition, driving down tax rates and offering backup plans, you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We'd love to help you as our client. We charge a fee for unbiased advice, and we give you access to more countries and more options than pretty much anyone else in the business to lower your taxes, move some of your money offshore legally, get second residence, get a second passport, all because my belief is holding a US or Western passport will be more and more toxic. It will be harder and harder to get wealthy by holding these passports. Living in these countries is already toxic and high tax and low freedom. And so you want to take advantage of this plurilateralism. The old global order doesn't work anymore. And so countries are competing rather than coordinating. But what this plurilateralism is saying is you're going to see countries with either sets of interests. So BRICS, for example, would be an example. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now they've added on others. Hey, we have common interest, which basically is, hey, let's not let the West tell us what to do anymore. Let's have our own thing. Let's bring people into that fold. By the way, Brazil and India, not particularly low tax, nor is South Africa, but Russia and China and some of the others that are talking about getting in have been very tax friendly. The UAE now, of course, tax friendly. You've also got blocks of countries. So I've talked to you about this. ASEAN in Southeast Asia, Mercosur in South America, numerous blocks, the African Union as a Pan-African bloc, but also independent blocks in West Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, the Gulf, the GCC, all these different blocks. So you've got BRICS, which is kind of common interest. Then you've got all those blocks which are common geographies, and they're working together to offer competition. And so there's a couple ways you can play this. You look at the blocks that have common interests. That's where you might want to open a bank account. That's where you might want to set up a company because they're looking to be competitive with the existing world order. So Hong Kong says, hey, set up your company here. If you do it right and you don't live here and you don't really have any customers or employees here, we might tax you zero. Other countries in that situation might be like, hey, bring your capital here. We'll make it easy to open a bank account. I don't suggest you open a bank account in Russia. I'll tell you what, it's incredibly easy. Please come on in. American, not American, any nationality, please come on in. Have a seat. What kind of an account do you want? They don't have all the restrictions. I'm not saying, that's something that may cause you problems, but that's their attitude. Why wouldn't we open a bank account for someone? Why are we going to act like Luxembourg or Andorra and make you send us a stool sample? And I submitted a bank account in Europe recently. We had to for a company. The paperwork was probably yay thick. And so that's a function of Europe. That doesn't mean the rest of the world has to operate that way. So if you like less bureaucracy and if you like lower taxes, then those blocks that have common interest are going to serve you. What I've also told you is you want to get residence permits and citizenships in as many of those different geographic blocks as possible. When you do both together, you can zig and zag. You're looking to ethically and legally protect your interests, keep as much of your money as possible, protect your freedom, protect your family, have a nice life. There's nothing wrong with that, no matter what politicians in Paris and Brussels and Washington and London want you to think. I'm the goody two-shoes of the offshore world. You should be doing nothing untoward, avoid even the appearance of untoward, which is why I would suggest, hey, people aren't going to like it if you go and open that bank account in Russia. But the point still stands. These different blocks want to help you protect your power. And so you can go and get a passport. Let's talk about Africa. Sao Tome and Principe. It's a citizenship that I'm applying for as we speak. It's going to cost you $90,000 plus some fees. It is not a great passport for travel purposes, but you know what no one's going to do? Judge you as being Sao Tomean when you want to start your company there. Certainly not any of the places that are making it easier and cheaper and lower tax to start up a company. Would they judge you for being American? Yeah, quite possibly. Would they judge you for being European? We're going in that direction. There's banks in Singapore that are like, yeah, we don't really want British people here. Sorry. We'd rather have the Indonesians. And so if you're from the West, you have this mindset that of course anything Western beats Indonesian. Not in Singapore, not in Hong Kong. They understand Indonesians. They'd rather have the Indonesian. Money's money. And so if you have money, you want to take advantage of these blocks to go out and get, for example, a Sao Tomean passport in a Hong Kong company because you're leveraging the fact that these different blocks want to offer you something that you can't get. And those blocks, they are happy to be competitive at the expense of the Western world. It may not be their number one goal to offer you sovereignty, but they realize that offering you financial and personal sovereignty is going to benefit them. And they're tired of living in the shadows. And so this is why you need diversification. I personally chose to give up US citizenship. Many of our clients who are Americans choose not to do that, and that's fine. I believe that there's going to be some European citizens, like the French, that in the next decade are going to have to look at, do I want to keep my French or my Dutch citizenship? I genuinely think some of these Western passports are going to become toxic. You need diversification to be ready for that. I am not a guy sitting in the Western world telling you this so I can make more money. I'm a guy sitting in the global South who did this. I've spent millions of dollars doing it, and I built the service that I wish would have existed for me to help others who agree with me do it. We all know that relying on one passport or one government is dangerous, but as the US becomes more protectionist and punitive, I think that smart people are going to be looking at how to expand into the kind of hubs that I'm talking about. Let's talk about some specifics. In this article, Singapore and the UAE were mentioned as gateway hubs. Singapore is good for banking. UAE is potentially good for company formation. I think if you want to live there. I think UAE for banking also, although it's not as robust and easily manageable remotely as Singapore's banking is. I think both are very safe places to bank, and that's probably the big flag that I would plant there. Once you have bank accounts in those jurisdictions, you have an easier pathway to making investments either in their stock market, certain debt markets, even in some cases things like IPOs or private credit. The more bank accounts you have in different hubs in the world, the more access you have to opportunities there. And that's why I would play those. And so what you want is a series of kind of high-level hubs like those, the gleaming, shimmering skylines, and you want to mix that with the more pragmatic hubs, let's say like a Hong Kong. You want to mix that then with the lifestyle havens like a Malaysia or a Uruguay or a Serbia, where it's just a light touch, live here, we're going to leave you alone. Maybe you work towards a passport, maybe you just keep it at a residence permit. And then you want to mix that as well with the unknown, the Sao Tome and Principes. That's the kind of passport that you want. The Caribbean citizenship by investment in St. Lucia, as the flag pan indicates. These countries are not going to bother you. So each of these different countries has something to offer. St. Lucia, by the way, part of both the Organization of Eastern and Caribbean States, which allows free movement around them. So as a St. Lucian, I can easily go to the other islands, a couple of which are tax-free as a citizen. It's also part of the Caribbean community, and there's increasing migration in that. So we're seeing, again, the ideological blocks and the geographic blocks are increasingly opening up, which is why I've said, get the African passport now. Because as those African countries increasingly decide to have open migration, open investments, a citizen of one country will have higher privileges than the other country. I think you may see the same thing. It's being discussed in ASEAN, 11 countries in Southeast Asia. Mercosur, same thing. You want to be able to move all around the world based on global conditions. And so, get a UAE golden visa by putting money in a bank account. That's an option that I like. If you happen to invest tens and tens of millions of dollars, they may give you citizenship. They've done a couple hundred of those. But for most people, you're going to get a golden visa, put 550,000 US dollars in the bank, get the golden visa in the UAE, have access to other investments. You don't have to live there, but if you want to, you can. And that's going to give you a foothold in the Gulf. Singapore is expensive to move. Even our $500 million clients have said, it's too much work. Why not Malaysia next door? I think you'll see more presence from Malaysia. So bank in Singapore, get a residence permit in Malaysia. What I would do, because Asia is the future that's here now, I'd have a couple different Asian residence permits to play ASEAN. I would look at Malaysia residence, Philippines residence, Thailand residence. Those are all pretty obtainable. Indonesia, I don't like quite as much, but you can do that once by putting money in the bank. And I would look at even potentially a citizenship. I recently got Cambodian citizenship, so now I've got my ASEAN toehold. You can do any or all of those. This is what our clients are increasingly coming to us for. I don't just want plan B. I want plan B, C, D, and E. For taxes, for asset protection and my money, and for where I'm going to live and what my identity is. Nobody in Asia is going to judge me for being a Cambodian citizen. And if the US does, then so be it. They judged me from the beginning. They judge everybody. Who cares? Those are some specific things that I would do today. I would also work on getting a Mercosur residence permit in Latin America. And I would work on getting banking tunnels in any easy jurisdiction where I could. So Ecuador, Georgia is still easy. Armenia is still relatively easy. Cambodia can be doable. Singapore, if you can get in, you're willing to put in the larger amount of money. I mean, those are all very achievable, banking havens that actually work. You don't have to put a lot of money in most of those, but set those things up because the quality of most of those places is improving. And Georgian banks just keep getting better. That's reflected in the bank stock. I mean, Bank of Georgia, Lion Financial Group, the stock has gone nuts since I bought it 2 years ago. I don't know that I could recommend buying it now, and I'm certainly not giving you investment advice to buy it. But as the US is taking stakes in companies and controlling Nvidia and taxing like it's the Soviet Union or something now, this is the perfect time for you to start diversifying. And so personal diversification beats geopolitical instability. It does. There's a geographical solution to pretty much every problem. Governments negotiate alliances, companies negotiate supply chains, but you as an individual can negotiate your life. Look at the, again, ideological blocks, look at the geographic blocks, and then build financial and ideological, residence and citizenship and identity around geographical, have plan B, C, and D in each, move your money around different places. I mean, one thing, that's done well for me, Georgian lari, Armenian dram, they both gained ground in the last 5 years against the US dollar. They both pay, 9 to 13% interest. If you, do that, you can actually get paid more than you're getting paid in the West to protect yourself from future Western problems while building an identity to allow you to escape the West when the time comes. That's what we do here at Nomad Capitalist. That's what I've done personally. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you want to learn how to be our client and build a strategy that makes you globally sovereign. I wrote the book on it. You can buy this on Amazon. It's a bestseller, and we would love to help you do exactly what I'm doing to prepare for a very different world that will no longer revolve around two superpowers.